Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me and for being able to share what we're doing with JustOne Organics. Um, Ifeyinwa, I'll just let you know when to advance the slides, okay? I'd like to do that now, so we'll go to the Y slide. Perfect. So thank you, everybody. I was so impressed with the people that I just saw, and this webinar is about financing regenerative local food systems. Quick background, I've been working on this question and the operational details of how to grow farmers. How do we grow a new generation of farmers? Here in the US, the average age of farmers is over 65 years old. They're all retiring, and most of their children don't want to farm. And there are reasons for that I became aware of 25 years ago that are still operating today. Some of you may experience these in your communities as well. Farming is a very difficult profession for most farmers. And I asked, there are a lot of good people like all of you working on different aspects of this problem. So I asked, what is nobody doing that needs to be done? And the one thing that I found many, many years ago is there's not really an initiative yet that is able to organize and buy large amounts of produce from local farmers anywhere in the world at a good price with contracts before they plant, and also to buy their seconds, the food that's wasted. So I set this company up and our work so to accomplish this mission, this why, which is to grow farmers, living soil, healthy people, and abundant, secure local food systems for all. Thank you, Ifeyinwa. Let's go to the next slide, please. So these are the 4 mission arcs of our work. We've established a pilot here in the US, but the other part that we've done, and this has been a lot of my work over many years too, along with finding ways to be able to buy lots of local food every day at a good price, is to figure out how to finance these centers around the world very quickly. So we've put a lot of things in place to be able to do that. Let's keep going to the next slide, please. Part of what I've noticed, I've been working with finance and with agriculture for the last 2 decades or more, is that much of what we're doing that is slowing down our transition to regenerative food systems has to do with outdated ways of thinking and relating that come from our beliefs about the world. So I'm going to go through this very quickly, but I feel it's important. So maybe we can advance to the next slide, please. How I began the work in officially 15 years ago with my company was to create the model for a bank that could finance our projects, all of our projects. That bank, I was offered almost $500 million over about 5 years to do that. And I kept saying no, thank you to that money because it was not deeply values aligned. And I knew if we went with those wonderful people that were offering to be part of our work, that we would probably not succeed. So after a few years of that, I decided to stop raising money for a bank and to focus back on the power of food and our drying method for food systems. And with that money, we'll be able to start our own banks and finance more projects around the world. So the basic operating principles that we work with, which we feel are just as important as the actual technologies, as the business models that we all have that are very important, are these 3, the transition of these 3 operating principles that will make our work much more successful. Next slide, please. So we will go through this quickly because I believe we all understand this very well. We just haven't figured out always how to implement this in our businesses, especially in relationship to more traditional financing that's out there that usually operates with good intentions, but the very financial model itself tends to pull us backward away from these three principles, which we need if we're going to truly regenerate and have a long-term, generational, thousand-year transformation of our food systems and our ecosystems and our societies. Next slide, please. These other operating principles we've come up with as a way to check ourselves and to make sure that we're not just talking about things that feel good, but we're actually implementing them in our business. And we've taken many years and worked very in a very committed way to doing this. These principles of abundance, mutuality, collaboration, creativity, efficiency, and generosity. We feel these principles must be, to the best of our ability, all of us, right, being implemented into our businesses and our projects if we want them to align with these principles that we see in nature herself. Please, next slide. Thank you. So now we come to some practical things that are important. This slide, I'm going to talk about this for just a minute. This is our drying technology. What I realized is that with most food, the reason that we're not connecting the enormous amount of food waste with the people who need to eat really good, healthy food is because it's perishable, for one thing, and it's not able to get from where it's grown and currently being wasted to where it's needed. I believe that in some of the countries that I was privileged to see presentations about today, that the food waste problem is probably less than it is in other countries like the US. We have verified in the US that on average, 42% of our food rots on our farms. It's wasted. And it's edible food. That's edible food wasted on the farms here. I used to think it was less, but now I know it's a lot more. So the reason that food is wasted, typically in a lot of more developed nations, I guess, is because the populations of those countries have been changed culturally to only be willing to buy food that looks a certain way. So here in this country, I know this is not true in Africa because I've been to lots of countries. I've spent 30 years in Hawaii, and it's not true there that when a culture is more connected in a wonderful way to its roots, to its traditions, then the people there will buy and eat food that's perfectly good and healthy and tastes great and doesn't look, quote, perfect. In America, it's not that way. So if you can believe it, when you go into even health food stores and even organic food stores in the US, for example, if you look at the bananas, they all have the same arc, exactly the same arc, which those of us who live in places that grow bananas, we know that's not natural. So what happens to all the other bananas that are not that arc? They're thrown away. So we decided many years ago that if we can gently dry organic produce and it will be preserved for many, many years, then we have a chance to change the economics of a food system by being able to buy up to 7 million pounds of food, local organic food, as it's grown by local farmers, in addition to what they're growing now. So the incentive is simple contracts before they plant, good prices, supportive terms, being able to buy their seconds that they're wasting now and pay a decent price for that. We find receptivity to be able to pay a greatly discounted price for the seconds because the farmers have already paid to grow that food and they pay themselves through the price they charge for what they do sell to cover growing the entire crop, which includes what they throw away. So that's why they're often willing to give us that food all the time willing to sell it at a deep discount. Now, what do we do with that discount or that extra gross margin on our purchase of the seconds? We don't need to keep it. We recirculate it. That is money that is freed up out of the ground through market and processing efficiencies. We recirculate that capital back into the food system to do things that need to be done, like providing food for people that are hungry, providing more support to farmers, more education, things like that that we will change in each community, right? So this picture is an example of our gentle dried blueberry crystals. You see the machine, the dryer. This particular dryer is an old one that we use right now. We've just redesigned it. We'll be building new and better versions. This dryer is about 75 feet long altogether, and it can process a decent amount of food. The food goes through this dryer, and we will remove 98% of the water in about 5 minutes at a very, very low temperature. I'm not sure the conversion, but for those of you who can check, it's approximately 135 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not raw, but it's very close to raw temperatures. How do we do that? If you look closely at this picture, you'll see the light-colored blueberry film on this conveyor belt. That film is about as thin as a piece of paper. Underneath this conveyor belt, there's different tanks of hot water touching the belt underneath and transferring heat from the water through the conveyor belt into the food puree that we make, and then evaporating it out into this tunnel that you see with air flowing through it to take the moisture away and bring fresh, dry air in. So that's how we can dry food and remove twice as much moisture as freeze drying in 5 minutes instead of 12 hours. And the resulting quality of the food is literally the best quality dehydrated food on earth. Nutritionally, it's in the mid to high 90% of the nutrition being retained. The flavor, the fragrance, and the color are extraordinary and beyond anything else. And the versatility of this food is also beyond any other dried food because it's not a powder. It's a crystalline flake that is attractive visually and stimulates people's imagination to use it in almost anything in their feeding their families. Okay, next slide, please. So we, again, as we go to the next slide, we see this as an economic engine. Again, we're using the American farmer, these statistics I talked about already a little bit. So we can probably go to the next slide and keep going. Again, these are simple principles. I spent years going around the world and asking over 1,000 farmers, what will it take for you to grow more food? And the answer was always the same thing: buy it. Farmers would like to have more market for their food. We've also seen that as we have a good, simple, supportive contract on one page, simple language, and we follow through and buy their food when it's ready at the price we agreed, we offer different kinds of technical support. We can buy their seconds that they're wasting right now. And we do that consistently, that farmers will grow more food. Okay, next slide, please. So here's some more statistics that we've talked about already. Each drying center, gentle drying center, or GDC, can buy up to 7 million pounds of organic produce per year through supportive relationships, and will create 36 full-time jobs inside the processing facility, at definitely more than 200 indirect farming and farm support industry jobs to grow that food. People sometimes ask about non-certified organic. We have programs that we are implementing to work with farmers that are not certified organic, that would like to grow food without spraying poison on their crops and on their soil. And we're very supportive of that as well. So it works both ways, and it's a good economic engine. So next slide, please. Okay, so this This is an example. We're going to start talking about the actual crystals themselves because this is very important. I think this picture you're looking at Granny Smith apple crystals, dehydrated. This is the fuel for the economic engine. So people talk sometimes about how do you bring a movement out to the world, and we're all in this movement together. And one way to look at this is you lead with your purpose, which we've talked about, growing farmers, feeding people, balancing ecosystems, and ending hunger, right? So that's our why. The how for us is the center itself, the economic engine, because it will accomplish that why as we set up more centers. And the what is here, it's our food. It puts fuel in the engine financially because people buy our food. The more people buy our food, the more centers we can establish. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit now briefly about the food itself. And we'll go through these quickly. The point of these slides is to show you pictures of some of our foods and also the wide variety of uses for them. So we can keep going here through more slides, please. Again, these are statistics that we've talked about already. So we'll just keep going through this. And again, to reemphasize the versatility of our food. So we'll conclude here with how we can all work together. And actually, we can just go through these slides because I want to end quickly with something else that's not in this deck.